honored to be here in year 11 doing this program, and we've done this many, many years here on this program, and it's all part and parcel of one of the greatest blessings that I've had since moving out here to Los Angeles, that Susie and I got to meet Linda and Al Michaels and befriend and call this man a friend, and he is back here on the program again in advance of celebrating another year of the Miracle on Ice. Good to see you, Al Michaels. How are you, sir? How are you, brother?
45 years. I think we've done...
Unbelievable.
I know we've done 40, maybe 42.
Yeah.
Can we both last 5 more? Can you still be here? Because that will be one hell of a celebration.
It will be 50.
It will be.
But 45 is no slouch in its own right.
Unbelievable.
Now, that's tomorrow.
It is.
Is the Saturday, February 22nd, will be the 45th anniversary. What were you doing the day before? What was the day before?
Well, the day before was an off day. Remember, the U.S. team had played 5 games in Lake Placid leading up to getting into the medal round. So the day before, I'm just preparing for the Friday game against the Soviets. My partner, Ken Dryden, after they had played, the United States had beaten West Germany on Wednesday night, got into a car, was driven overnight to Ottawa to take the bar exam, which he not only passed, but I believe he had the highest score of that bar exam, got in a car and came back. I've always said Ken is about as smart a man as I've ever met, a true Renaissance man, a man who, had he desired to become the Prime Minister of Canada, probably could have. He did serve in the Parliament for a while, but then decided he wanted to do other things. He passed the bar exam with flying colors. So that's what he did the day before the game, and I'm sitting in my room just learning how to pronounce every Soviet player's name.
The polysyllabic test you were taking there.
The great thing is almost every one of them ends with "ov." You know, Fetisov, Makarov, the whole thing, Krutov. Perfect.
There was that benefit of that for sure, and then of course the game itself. What was it like the day leading up to the convening inside the arena for that big game against the Russians?
I mean, so much anticipation, but the game was going to start at 5 o'clock. The way it worked out, you didn't know who was going to play who until the early round was completed, at which point the U.S. finished second in its bracket and the Soviets were first. So 2 in the U.S. bracket wound up playing 1. So people who bought the 8 o'clock ticket, they didn't know what game they were going to get. They got Sweden, Finland. If you had the 5 o'clock ticket at $69.20 face price, you got the U.S. against the Soviet Union. And that's why the game wound up on tape delay, because ABC tried like crazy to get them to move that game to 8 o'clock. But the Soviet Federation basically said, no dice.
Yet,
niet with a lot of exclamation points. And, we weren't the friendliest with the Soviet Union at that time, which, of course, played into what made that game so special. So I walked over to the arena with Ken Dryden at about 1:30. We were staying at the Hilton Hotel, which is like 3 or 4 blocks away. And I remember one part of the conversation with Ken was, if the U.S. only trails something like 3-1 in the middle of the second period, that's about all we could hope for. Because what we feared, certainly I feared, was the Soviets would lead 6-0, 14 minutes to go in the second period, and everybody's gone. And knowing Rune Arledge at that time, who was running ABC Sports, he probably would have put on figure skating ordinals or something, anything to get away from that game. So this was what we were hoping for. And, of course, as the game evolved, and it was only 3-2 at the end of the second period, we hit a grand slam home run. It was a close game after 2 periods. And you and I have talked about this in the past, but there were so many interesting and fascinating things about that game. The Soviets, number one, outshot the United States 39-16, 2.5-to-1 ratio. They outshot the U.S. 15-3 in the second period. They dominated the time of in the offensive zone for the Soviets was 2 or 3 times what it was in the U.S. zone. The U.S. came from behind 3 times, down 1-0, 2-1, 3-2, and of course take the lead on Mark Johnson's tying goal and Eruzione's game winner. So how often will you see a game? It's almost never where a team gets outshot 2.5-1, and comes from behind 3 times. It almost never happens. It happened that night.
And speaking of the Eruzione moment, let's relive that here with Al Michaels sitting with us. Roll it.
U.S. team is depending a little bit too much now on Jim Craig. He's making too many good saves. Eruzione! Mike Eruzione! Now we've got Bedlam.
Now we got Bedlam, and now, live on the Rich Eisen Show, Al Michaels, I'm pleased to say, we now have Mike Eruzione as well joining us live here on the program. There's the captain. There's the captain.
Alfalfa.
The honorary captain of the U.S. team last night. That was fabulous.
Hey, did the goal go in again in the highlight there?
I mean, now that we have Mike, a couple of things. Mike said if that puck doesn't go in, he's spent the last 45 years painting bridges, right?
Right.
He'd have done a little bit better than that. But I love the fact he says every once in a while he might get a little down. He'll go home and put the tape in. Best thing about that tape, every time he shoots, the puck goes in. And it will forever, my man.
Oh, nice to see you. Thanks for letting me join you today.
Oh, are you kidding me, Mike? Thank you for doing this. You just make it that much more special. I mean, when you see that moment relived, what goes through your mind 45 years ago tomorrow, Mike?
Well, I just think the joy that my teammates and I experienced of, winning a big hockey game. And it's funny because we're going to celebrate the Soviets tomorrow, but if we don't beat Finland, you and I aren't having this conversation today. So as great as the Soviet victory was, the Finland game became the biggest game for us. So and I look back again, like you said, and the question was at this moment, it's just the joy of realizing that we would end one more step away from realizing an ultimate dream. And you couldn't have been around a better group of players than my teammates, and just the joy and excitement of winning that game and what it eventually led to the next 2 days later to finish it off with the gold medal, and the joy we brought to a nation. We didn't know we were just playing hockey in a little place in Lake Placid. There were no media, interviews. We weren't traveling around the country. There's no Facebook and Twitter, like social media. So we were in a little cocoon in Lake Placid, just having fun, and then realized that, oh my God, this thing's pretty big. And I think that's the pride and the joy that my teammates and I take with that.
It's so. I mean, there are so many parts to this that you go back and you think about them. And Mike is so right about the Finland game, because it was, and Mike was there. Herb Brooks basically telling the team in the locker room at the end of the second period, after they're trailing 2-1, if you lose this game, you're going to take it to your bleeping grave. And there's no question about that. If this team would have lost the Finland game, people would have said, let me get this straight. You beat the vaunted Soviet Union and you lost to Finland? Because on the reverse side of that would be like somebody from the Soviets. And in fact, I had the opportunity at the 2014 Olympics to interview Tretiak, the goalie who was pulled after the first period in that game. And then Michigan comes in, and they got, because Mark Johnson had scored at the buzzer at the end of the first period. So they take Tretiak, maybe the best goalie in the history of hockey. They take him out, and I asked him, what did people say to you guys when you got back to the Soviet Union? And he said, we'd walk around and people would say, you lost to a bunch of students? And the other thing he said to me was, I said to him, what did you think? Because they just won all the time. They won so much that Mike and I were talking the other day, at the end of the 1-goal victory that the U.S. had against the Soviets, they didn't even pull the goalie because they probably never practiced it. They were always winning. They didn't have to think about pulling the goalie for the extra skater. And Tretiak told me, when I said, what were you guys thinking? You're standing there pensively on the blue line. You're watching this crazy celebration. And he said to me, we wished we were them. Perfect.
What do you think about when you hear that, Mike?
I think it's great. No, but I think there was almost kind of not a relief, but they enjoyed watching us celebrate to a degree, because they never shared that. You never saw any emotion out of them. They were expected to win. That was their job. They worked. They were in the military. Some of these guys were going for their third gold medal. That's 12 years playing together. So for them to get beat like that, it was almost like, oh my God, I guess this is a celebration that we don't do that often. And maybe in some ways enjoyed watching us just, share that victory amongst all of us and the crowd.
So why do you think it worked for you guys, Mike? Like, why do you think this moment in time actually occurred all these years later now?
From the teams of winning the tournament, I think Dave Silk said it pretty well the other day when we were doing something. He said for a 2-week period of time, 20 players collectively played their best hockey they've ever played, individually and yet collectively. And I thought that was a pretty good point because I never really thought about that. But I've always said, if it wasn't for Mark Johnson, we don't win. Mark was the man. He when we needed a goal, it would be like, hey, Magic, time to do something. But we played 4 lines constantly. We didn't, shy away from playing everybody. Jimmy was great in the goal. And the one thing that I remember and is I scored with 10 minutes left to go in the game. And I think, if I remember correctly, the Soviets only had 5 or 6 shots on goal in the last 10 minutes. They had like 30-something in the first 2 periods and a half. But in the last 10 minutes, we did a really good job of shutting them down. And I think that goes back to Herb as a coach. So everything worked. We clearly had some good players. We didn't suck. Kenny Morrow went on and won 4 Stanley Cups. Davey Christian, Mike Ramsey, and Neil Broughton played 17, 18 years in the National Hockey League. So we had some really good young players, but collectively we had the right players. And with Herb's leadership and the way he, played us and how we played, was a huge part of our success. And I'm going to give you a statistic, and I don't know if Al, if you even know this, and Robbie McClanahan gave this to me. In the third period of the Olympics, we outscored our opponents 15-3. That's an unbelievable number. And that goes back to the conditioning and the skating and the Herbies and everything that we had done to go out there and win. And Al mentioned it. We were losing to Sweden, we tied. We were losing to the Czechs, we won. We were losing to Norway, we came back. We were losing to West Germany by 2 goals, we came back. We were losing to the Soviets throughout the game, we came back. We were losing to Finland going into the third, we came back. That's a sign of a good hockey team. And that's a sign of, guys, and I talk about it all the time, who had incredible values, incredible work ethic. Herb used to call us a lunch pail, hard hat group of guys because that's what we were. We were an old-fashioned group of guys who believed in hard work. We believed in togetherness. And when you put all that together, usually good things happen. And I think, again, that's the side of our team that you don't measure. You don't see that. You don't measure heart and pride and commitment and the values that are important that our team had to go along with some pretty good hockey players. And so, again, having said all that, you just put that all together over a 2-week period of time. I think that's how we were able to win.
It's so interesting you're mentioning the fact that the U.S. played great third periods coming from behind in all of those games, including the 2 most important, the Soviets and Finland. And so you know what paid off? All those Herbies that he made you guys do, right? How angry he was when you're on that European tour and the game is over and he makes them keep the lights on in Helsinki or Oslo, I forgot where it was, and he makes the guys go up and back till they're puking, right? The conditioning paid off, didn't it?
And he shut the lights off in the building and we're still doing them. Yeah, every guy that I played with and went on and played in the National Hockey League, they said the best shape they've ever been in their life was the 6 months that we played under Herb. And he used to say there's a method to my madness. And clearly there was.
Where's the puck, Mike? Where's the puck that you put in the basket?
I don't know. I wish I had it because I could sell it for a lot of money.
Wow. Wait a minute. Where is that puck?
I was told that it went out of play. This is a true story. After I scored, he went back and they had a face-off. And at some point, the puck went in the stands. And a guy called me years later and said he had the puck and he wanted me to sign it because he wanted to sell it. And I'm like, how do I know it's the puck? Because it was just a black puck. It wasn't like in the days today with, they might even have chips in them to see,
right.
While they have logos on them. Man, I could go down my basement now and bring up a puck and say, hey, I got the puck from the game against the Soviets. Give me $50,000, So That's all I know. Is some guy said he got it in the stands. It went out of play.
So you score the goal. They use the puck again, and it gets sent out of play. Like goes over the boards into somebody's hands. Like that's literally what happened.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
Mike, where's the stick?
I sold the stick from the Soviet game. I have my Finland stick. I'll be real quick here.
Sure.
10 years ago, I sold all my memorabilia other than my skates, my stick from the Finland game, the watch that I got, the ring that I got, the other ring that we got, and the gold medal. I still have those items. I got $1.6 million for my equipment, my shoulder pads, my shirts, the game shirts that I wore. I took the money. Financially, things are fine. I endowed a scholarship in my mother and father's name at Boston University. I have my own charitable foundation. I put money into my foundation, and my 3 kids took the money, and all 3 have bought houses.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, Mike Eruzione.
But the other stuff's going to be sold soon.
Okay. Well, Mike, listen.
Except the medal.
Except the
Not
medal.
the medal, no.
Sure.
No
Hey,
way.
before I let you go, I would be remiss if I did not ask you what it was like last night to be out there, with Team USA and Gretzky and Team Canada and TD Garden, this 4 nations face off. You're wearing Johnny Hockey's sweater. I mean, what in the world was this like for you, Mike?
It was unbelievable. I'm from Boston, so to be in my backyard. I got to know the team. I spoke to the team in Montreal, so had a great relationship with the players. There were, 4 players from Boston University there as well, so that was kind of an induction for me to get to know all the other players fairly quickly. But the atmosphere in the building, the USA chants that were going on, it was electrifying. It was incredible. And I mean, Gretzky and I are standing there, and we both said it almost at the same time. I was more nervous on the ice last night with the opening of the game than I was against the opening of the game against the Soviets. And Gretz said, same as me. He said, I was never nervous playing hockey. He says, I'm nervous out here with all this noise. So it was just really nice. It was a great game. 2 great nations, great hockey back and forth. Unfortunately we didn't win the game, but we were not embarrassed by the game at all whatsoever. It could have gone either way.
Al, just wanted to hook you up with Mike Eruzione.
Oh,
tonight,
man,
brother.
it's always great. Yeah, Mike and I, we talk from time to time on the phone, and we've done a few events together. It's always great to see the great Mike Eruzione. Mike Eruzione!
Us, thank you very much. Tell the leggy Greek I said hello.
And you say, my very best to his wife's name is Donna, but he calls her Donna, right?
Donna.
That old accent, the old New England accent.
Thanks for having me on the show. Keep talking to Al. He's got a lot of great stories.
You got it. Mike Eruzione, thanks, brother.
Bye,
That's
bud.
captain of the 1980 U.S. men's Olympic gold medal team. Yeah. Pretty cool, huh?
Very cool. Very. It's just it's a story that really never gets old. I mean, I had no idea. Nobody had any idea at that point in 1980 how long it would last. I mean, Jim McKay said to me that we had a wrap-up show on Sunday night, and he brought all of the the announcers who had done the individual sports, and Keith Jackson had done Eric Hyden's gold medals, and Frank Gifford and Bob Beatty at alpine skiing. So I come in, and of course, this is going to be the premier segment that night because of what had happened earlier that day and over that weekend. And McKay said to me, "How long do you think this euphoria will last?" And I said, I don't know. It's of the moment right now, so we think it'll last forever. I don't know. We live in this world where things come and they go. In my heart, though, I thought maybe this one will last for a while. And here we are. Here we are in 2025.
And it is as fresh as ever, Al.
Well,
it really
I think
is.
a lot of it has to do, I think, with because a lot of people weren't born, obviously, at that time.
Right.
But I mean, HBO did a fantastic documentary. Ross Greenberg produced it back in 1980. In 2001, it was the 20th anniversary, but it took them an extra year to do it. It was fabulous. I thought it got everything exactly right. And then the movie Miracle, directed by Gavin O'Connor. You saw the Kurt Russell thing last night. Nobody I think, captured anybody any better ever than they were in real life than Kurt did with Herb Brooks. I mean, it was so freaky. And I was a part of the movie doing some narration for the people and working very closely with Gavin O'Connor. So one little side story here. So Gavin tells me at one point he had this idea, and the movie turned out the way he wanted it to. But you know the way you're always getting notes from the higher-ups and the people in the creative end at Disney and all of that. And there were a couple of people that were pressuring him to turn this in to a love story between Herb and Patty Brooks. That was going to be the thrust of the movie. And it's amazing how many times these guys who do these movies have to fight. You've got to fight with all those people up above who are sitting in the ivory towers. Can you imagine turning that story into a coach and his wife love story as opposed to what it was turned into?
Like Herb busts out a bottle of Cabernet or something like that?
I don't know what they had in mind.
Oh, my goodness.
But Gavin stood his ground, and there you have the movie that kids to this day just love to watch.
It's amazing. And again, from my perspective, I'm on the edge of my seat. I know how it ends, too. You know what I mean? Like, I know the ending. Spoiler alert, We just showed that photograph of you with Ken Dryden in the booth. I mean, what do you think of when you see this, Al? This photograph?
Who is that?
Yeah, right.
That guy on the right. On the left. I'm going number one. I forgot when I had that much hair.
Nice.
Okay? So I don't know where that all went.
Right.
In those days, that you wore that kind of a shirt, that collar.
Yeah.
Which may come back at some point. I mean, everything comes and goes. So I probably kept the shirt. It might be. I'm not sure where the sweater might be in storage. Meanwhile, take a look at these days with the 4K monitors you have and the whole thing. Look at that. That's our monitor.
That's your monitor on the right.
That's the monitor you're calling the game
in Technicolor. I can see the color on the right. Who's can of Tab is that in the middle right there?
Think about that.
Who's that? Were you drinking the Tab or is that Ken?
That might have been me, and I had a pack of Larks someplace else. But I was smoking in those years, and I had to go out between periods to.
Is that right?
To take a couple of drags outside.
You couldn't pull a Jim Leland?
I couldn't pull or an Earl Weaver.
An Earl Weaver? Earl would hit a dart or two during the game.
He used to call Don Stanhouse full pack, right? The relief pitcher. He'd come in, and Stanhouse would get into trouble, but work his way out of it, and Earl used to call him full pack. Another one of my partners, Earl Weaver.
That's right.
So, didn't Earl have a pocket sewn into his jersey where he kept his?
Did he have a pocket sewed in?
Earl?
To keep his cigarettes?
He might have. He got thrown out of so many games, though, right? He would go down to in the tunnel toward the clubhouse, and he'd be there, and you see the smoke coming out of the tunnel. What a beauty he was!
He wasn't following his ejection with the puffs of smoke coming out.
No way.
That is so funny. I've got Al Michaels right here in studio. Our Rich Eisen Show radio network is back on the air with our Roku channel stream. I'm sitting at the Rich Eisen Show desk furnished by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call clickgrainger.com or just stop by. One of the reasons why the game against the Soviets went that way is because Jim Craig was standing on his head pretty much the whole time, right? Right. I mean, what was the shot differential again? What was it again?
39-16, 15-3 in the second period. And as Ken Dryden said just before I call Eruzione's goal, the Americans are putting too much pressure on Jim Craig. Mm-hmm. But Jim Craig kept us in the game. He kept us in. It's real simple. Because if the Soviets had taken like a 4-2 lead, that would have been very, very, very difficult to overcome.
And here's some of your calls of Jim Craig standing on his head in that game.
Lookoff in on Craig, the save by Jim, stops the rebound, and the whistle for the face-off. Now to Pervukin. Pervukin slap shot is covered up by Jim Craig. Petrov, number 16, long slap shot, and Craig able to sweep it aside, and the puck clears the glass and goes into the seats. So Jim Craig tested time and time again tonight with 5:21 remaining in the game.
And I am pleased to have joining us now live on Zoom for you, Al Michaels, is none other than Jim Craig. Good to see you, Jim.
Yes.
There he is.
Hey, how's Linda, Steve, and Jennifer?
Everybody's just great. We think about you and the family all the time, man. Good to see. I haven't seen you in a number of years. God, you look great.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah. Rich, you can't win a Stanley Cup, you can't win an Olympic gold medal unless your goalie is terrific. It's impossible. And what can you say about Jim? Every time he had to make a save, he made the save. Kept us in every game. Again, we fell behind in every game, but there he was, and especially in the third period, he was impossible to penetrate at that point.
So nice of you. Thank you, Al, after all these years. I was thinking just the other day as I transitioned from the athlete to the business person, you realize that to be the very best at it takes so much work. And, so when I learned all the behind the scenes stuff that goes on with your business and how professional you are, the one thing that comes to my mind is your balance to be able to understand the game, utilize your assets. And in Lake Placid, Kenny was such an asset and never outstepped him. It was, it was almost like this script was made before you guys even called the game. You guys are so good. Thank you.
I mean, and Kenny was the perfect partner. Remember, Kenny had never done this before, and Ken had just retired at the peak of his career after winning several Vezina trophies and multiple Stanley Cups. And Ken just wanted to experience different things in life, and he talked to his agent, Art Kaminsky, put him in touch with ABC, and they put us together. And, of course, I've told you the story many times about I got that game because I had done one hockey game, and everybody else on that staff had done none. Howard Cosell, Jim McKay, Keith Jackson, Chris Schenkel, they hadn't done any. So I almost got that assignment by default. And also, I was a kid who grew up in New York, and I loved hockey, so I knew what offside and icing were. Which at that point was a very important thing to know.
And that's how you got the gig?
And that's how I got the gig, right? And they put me with Kenny, and Kenny and I went to Moscow to scout the teams before the Olympics in December of 79. And, Kenny's very erudite and describes things beautifully and brilliantly, unbelievably articulate. And he spends about 5 or 6 minutes at dinner the first time we met in Moscow explaining to me the difference between international hockey and the National Hockey League brand of hockey. And then Ken says to me, Ken, he looked like the professor. He's got the glasses and the whole thing, the pipe. He's got everything but the slippers and the dog. And Ken says to me, he said, now, do you think this is the kind of thing the American audience would be interested in? I said, Ken, yes, but let me introduce you to the world of television. Can you get it down to 8 seconds? And he did. He figured it out.
Oh, man. And Jim, did you wake up that day? How? Like, what was going on in your mind when you woke up in Lake Placid 45 years ago Saturday?
Well, one of the things is everybody prepares to win, or they think they do. But with our coach, he was the most organized person there was. And so in order to prepare to win, you have to get organized. And, I think one of the biggest and smartest things that he did was have us play the Russians in Madison Square Garden so that we became more prepared. So when we woke up that morning, we had done the work, we were prepared, and it was really about executing. Now, just because you're organized, prepared, and you execute doesn't mean you're going to win. But, I think the biggest focus was how are we going to represent our country and do the very best job we could be. And for me, playing the Russians was like, in one period, was like a game against anybody else. So, you try to compartmentalize and have really strategic times. And Al, as you know, in sports, goalies have to make the save at the right time. So you watched that game last night, the Canadian goalie, if he didn't make any saves, he made them all at the right time, in overtime. And so timing has so much to do with it. So being prepared, enjoying the moment, probably the most important thing.
You were able to live in the moment, Jim? You were able to soak it in while you're doing this?
Yeah, I mean, you get to play against the greatest team in the world, and you're representing your country, and it's a really good test to find out where you're going to be. And I always tell people you have to have more goals. Most people, when they get somewhere, they think they're done. And to me, when you finally make it somewhere, you're just starting. You know what I mean? And so this was a real good litmus test.
And Rich, don't forget, one of the most iconic post-game camera shots ever taken was Jim Craig, whose mom had died shortly before. Where's my father? Where's my father? You could read his lips. What a moment, Jim. What a moment that was.
Yeah, Al, one of the things, and you and I have talked about this, is if you can change your mindset from sacrifices and look at them as opportunities where someone else has made sacrifices for you, then comes a responsibility. So it was really easy for me to think about my father and all the sacrifices that not only my family did, but community and coaches, and that can be used as a motivator. And I think that's really kind of something that I've been very fortunate enough to use as a tool of motivation.
Would you mind sharing with us what happened when you did find your dad?
Well, first, he used to be right behind the goal, and I used to love the end that didn't have the ice machine because there was more people there and you had more pressure. And he used to always sit up there. So I'd have to acknowledge him, you know what I mean? Because, hi, Dad, okay, time to go to work, right? And so, earlier in his life, he had a heart attack, right? A pretty bad one. And so when the game ends, he's not where he should be. And I found out that ABC had moved him to a better spot. And so I'm trying to find him and making sure he's okay. But the moment was really about both of us thinking of his wife and my mother and, wishing that she would be able to be physically with us there. And it was more out of a respect, so when I found him, he knew what I was thinking, right? And I was really happy to see him.
Something else, huh, Jim?
Wow. Oh, yeah. I mean, just you go back. I mean, 45 years later, we're talking about it, boy, and it's like...
It's still there.
Wow.
It still hits you.
Yeah, of course it does.
It hits me right here, right in the gut, right now, just hearing this.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right now.
And what's amazing, guys, is that the Four Nations tournament, what I felt last night were two countries needing some type of moral boost, and it was the hockey game that did it again, and it was about pride and respect. And these NHLers, they're not being paid. They're just so prideful. They have recognized the journey and so many people there, and people were just passionate and felt good. And it was like that feeling, but obviously at the Olympic stage is a little bit bigger.
I mean, to me, Rich and Jim know there's nothing like hockey. You get like in a Stanley Cup overtime game. I've been to a whole bunch of them, and if you're a fan, I mean, you're dying 1,000 deaths. The other team almost scores. Oh, you almost score. Oh, you hit the post. Oh, I mean, there's that moment. So many, and there's no other sport like that. There's nothing like hockey. Nothing in my mind.
You don't want to be the goalie's parent, though.
That's very true. Very true.
Where's the flag, Jim, that you were wearing, if you will? I don't know how. Walk me through the story of that. Who put it on your shoulder? Where you got the flag after it was all over, beating the Soviets?
The flag at the Colorado Springs has a Paralympic and Olympic museum, so it's always on display so everybody can see it. The story that I think is great just about the flag is that they didn't sell any at the arena. So every flag that you saw there, somebody brought from their house. And it meant something. And the only way you really had flags back in the day was probably because somebody within your family served for their country. And so to me, with great respect is the flag. And, to me, it's a non-negotiable. Right, it's something you need to respect and be proud of.
Rich, also in conjunction with that, I had done a number of sports. I'd done a couple of World Series. I'd done baseball for the whole decade of the 70s, college football. I'm at ABC, a lot of events. To me, this is where the chant started. USA, USA. This is where it started.
Al, I don't know if you know it. When I was doing research on my second book, We Win, I found the two part-time firefighters that were in Lake Placid. And the story is during the game against Sweden, they got off a little early, came in, we were losing. The crowd was like dead. And these two volunteer firefighters, and I'm sorry I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but started that chant, and that's where the chant started from. It was dead silent. They got up just out of pride and started yelling USA, and then it just, I mean, you see what it is now, right? Last night it wasn't political either. It was pride. And sometimes people do the USA or it's more symbolic of pride. But when it's real, it's a special, special chant.
No question. I mean, last night I think it had, forget about, the 51st state and the tariffs and all that. We know that plays into it, in my mind, very minimally. This was about the involvement of U.S. hockey, how good we are. And it all started, it goes back to 1980. And Jeremy Roenick once told me that the reason he wanted to be a hockey player was, watching that game and seeing how exciting it was. And, of course, that spawned, I think, a whole generation of players. The movie has probably spawned another generation. And now, let's face it, the U.S. and Canada are... If you're on radio only, I'm going to hold my fingers like a millimeter apart.
Nice.
If Austin Matthews had a couple of chances last night and Brady Tkachuk, if the puck goes in, we're having a different conversation today, aren't we?
We sure are. Hey, Jim, what a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, certainly on such a momentous occasion. I know you're being pulled in many different directions. You've done this multiple times, and keep looking for my calls, man. I get emotional seeing you, honestly. I think of that moment about, you looking for your dad and the flag on your shoulder and what it meant, and how you stood on your head and basically said no damn near 40 times that night. Unbelievable.
Well, Al and I are connected to an event that is so much more than a hockey game. But Al, the best part is I'm here in Denver and I'm with my granddaughter and my daughter. And last night, my son had the jersey on, went to the game. He had my little grandson with a jersey on, and my granddaughters, they're all wearing USA Hockey jerseys. And so it keeps going,
Nothing
for
like
all
it.
the right reasons. And nobody could have called it better, Al. I'm just so happy to get a chance to say hi to you.
Hey.
Hopefully we'll play some golf and everybody stay healthy, okay?
You guys wrote the script, not me. You gave me that. You gave me the opportunity to say something that came out of my heart. It was you guys. Let's be honest.
Well,
I mean,
you're the
it's all about
21st
you.
player on that team now, so I hope you boys know that.
I'm
And Rich, keep on doing what you do, and I'll catch up to you guys again one of these days.
good being the honorary mascot. Love you, man. Be good.
You too, Al. Bye.
Great.
The
See you
great
guys.
Jim Craig right here on the Rich Eisen Show.
Terrific. That's great. Wow. That was wonderful.
I can't believe you had only called one hockey game in your career
crazy.
before the 1980 Olympics.
Correct.
And part of the reason why they gave you everything is because you called one hockey game and nobody else called it another.
Correct.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, you can't imagine Cosell sitting there and doing those games. McKay was going to be the host and do figure skating. Frank Gifford and Bobby Addy wanted to go up to the mountain and do the skiing in the morning, and then go to après ski beginning at 3:00 with champagne and caviar. And then it's funny because I really wanted speed skating because Eric Heiden was going to be the big story of those Olympics, and clearly would have been. He was expected to win 5 gold medals, and he won 5 gold medals. But they gave that to Keith Jackson, and when I got hockey, I wasn't disappointed because, among other things, if you're doing a Winter Olympic sport, isn't it better to be inside, than outside? I mean, when I did the 1972 Olympics in Sapporo, Japan, that's where I did that one hockey game. Among the other events I covered was the biathlon at 10 below on the island of Hokkaido. So getting that assignment was pretty good. I could walk to the arena. And then, of course, as it turned out, it was like the most iconic moment of my sportscasting career. Nothing will ever beat that. People say, what's your favorite? I go, really?
I love that.
I mean, I've got a top 5, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then number 2 is number 5. I mean, nothing could beat this.
Right. And just seeing this moment, and but Eruzione mentioned it earlier too, Al. It's kind of like what's similar to it. A lot of people thinking the '86 World Series ended when the ball went through Buckner's legs.
Correct.
There was a Game 7.
There was.
Actually, after a rainout, too.
Right. I think the Red Sox even had the lead in the Game 7. Right?
And, there was still another game.
One more to go. Sure.
But that really wasn't in doubt. Was it in doubt, that game at all?
Finland game? Finland was
winning.
Projected to be better than we were. Oh, no. Finland was. So going into that tournament, Soviets obviously number one. Right. Czechoslovakia, a clear number 2. Mm-hmm. Then you had Sweden. And remember, we had to go to the final 30 seconds to wind up tying them on Bill Baker's goal. That was gigantic. Finland, West Germany was pretty good as well. So we were a team that looked like maybe, with some luck, we could win the bronze. Maybe.
Was Rune Aldridge out of his mind after this happened? Because this is the dream come true, right? Is a story like this
right.
and a moment like this on a broadcast like that.
Well, he was happy. But I think he was unhappy that we couldn't get this game moved to 8 o'clock Eastern time instead of 7.
Can you imagine this day and age?
5.
Could you imagine this day and age?
It couldn't happen. Of course not. No, within a second and a half. TikTok has it, or X has it, or wherever it is has it, right? Everybody's got it.
In the palm of their hands?
Yeah, we're living in those years, it's like we're working with an orange juice can and a string, right? It's a different animal. And don't forget, I've told you this story before, that because it was on tape delay, the game ends, and it's crazy. But now they have to empty out the building to bring in a new crowd that had the tickets for 8 o'clock, which turned out to be the other semifinal game, which was Sweden against Finland. So they made Ken Dryden and me stay and do the game into a tape machine in case we had technical difficulties when the tape of the U.S.-Soviet game was being played. Think about how ridiculous that was.
Oh, my word.
So Ken and I now had to do Sweden-Finland in a game that went to nobody and no place.
Al Michaels here on the Rich Eisen Show, everybody.
Wow. Well, I got in some more practice before the U.S.-Finland game.
Does that tape exist? Is there a tape of that somewhere, Al?
The tape of
that?
Probably not. They probably just erased it because we just went, because Rune said, keep those guys there in case we have a technical problem on the U.S.-Soviet tape. And that we could go to the arena and Kenny and Al can do the game.
This hour has flown by, sir.
Wow.
Right? This has been...
the years have flown by.
I know, 45 years. I can't
it's
believe
crazy.
it.
This is fun. This is I always look forward to the third week in February, knowing that I'll probably be here. And
you're so kind.
I've told so many of these stories. I'm sure they're redundant to people, but for some crazy reason, they do seem fresh. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the Four Nations yesterday and all of the rest, but it's a great bedtime story, isn't it?
Well, it's an incredible bedtime story. It is. It's the ultimate, you can't make this up. That's the name of your book. You know what I mean? And for good reason. Your memoir is called You Can't Make This Up, because you can't make this story up.
Right.
That's why they made an incredible Disney movie out of it.
And so many moments you remember. If you're old enough, Pearl Harbor, Kennedy's assassination, Challenger blowing up in 1986, 9/11, obviously. You remember where you were. They're all terrible. They're all terrible moments. This was a beautiful moment.
It was. And punctuated by the way you punctuated it, which is the greatest. It really is. And, in the minute we have left here, just pour it out of you. That's it?
Yeah.
It just came
out of my fiber. Once in a while, I'll have a gulp moment thinking, boy, if I had screwed that baby up. But serendipitous. I got lucky. It was me. There was nothing political in terms of what I wasn't saying, hey, we screw those guys, we're their arch enemies. I did that solely because it was a sports miracle. We couldn't win the game, and we won the game under those circumstances.
But to land on that word, too.
Well, the word in my mind was miraculous. It got morphed into a question and answer, and away we went. Rich, I had no idea. When I said those words, I didn't know that they would have the resonation that they've had through the years. But, you get lucky, and I really got lucky. I got lucky that the right words came at the right time.
How soon did somebody repeat that to you?
That night,
that night.
When I went to after Dryden and I had to do the Sweden-Finland game that went to no place.
Right.
Walked back to the hotel. Linda met me and said, "Oh boy, everybody's talking about what you said at the end of the game." I go, "Like what?" I'm calling I didn't want to screw the game up in terms of, let's say the Soviets, who were putting a lot of pressure on, had scored, and I'm saying whatever the hell I say, and they scored to tie the game. No, I was just concentrating on calling the game. And I know everybody's going crazy, and the truck's going crazy in my ear. But I was a horse with blinkers on, straight ahead, call the game. And then when the puck came out to center ice with 5 seconds to go, it enabled me to, have that word miraculous come into my head, do a question and answer, which I'd never done before on the air, and, and off we went. What can I tell you?
You're the best, Don
Hey,
Michaels.
Thanks, man. Hey, we got to do this every year.
We shall.
Up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Yep.
So great.
Goosebumps, man.
Obviously I've seen it thousands of times.
Right.
I watch it in the third person. I want to enjoy it from the outside in instead of the inside out. I know what's coming. You know what's coming.
Yeah.
But it's like, I want to enjoy it the way everybody enjoys it on the outside. Seeing that moment in time. And of course, I had the words, but the pictures supplemented the words perfectly, right? I mean, that was one of the great celebrations of all time. And then one of the great shots that we had was as the U.S. is celebrating, and Jack O'Callahan with that toothless grin that wound up on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and the guys are falling all over each other, and the Soviets are just standing at the blue line. A couple of guys with their chins on the knob of their sticks and just watching. And as I said earlier, it was almost like when Tretiak told me when they're watching that and thinking, we wished we were them. Not only wishing we were them, I think, in terms of winning that game, but wishing we were them and being able to emote the way we can in this country as opposed to what they were at that particular time. There were no such celebrations in the Soviet Union with anything at that point.
Kids celebrating. Look at these little kids, the fresh-faced kids.
Unbelievable.
Now 70-year-old men who are zooming into the program 45 years later to celebrate with you,
kidding.
Al.
No kidding.
And
Yeah.
it is a moment. I could only imagine, I only have a few seconds left here. What was it like outside of the arena? Out of the arena, just walking home, walking back.
Well, remember, I had to stay in the arena and do the next game.
Oh, that's right. You wouldn't know.
But you could feel it. I mean, you could hear the noise from outside, and and then I saw obviously tape of what had taken place out, and people are waving flags, USA, USA, the whole thing. It was a night to remember for all time.
I can't thank you enough, Al. You're the best.
Come
You're
on.
so the best to just take time, and it's an honor. An honor for all of us to be able to say to Eruzione and Jim Craig, "Hey, you want to zoom in with Al?" And they're like, "Absolutely."
Well,
thank you. You're
thank
the best.
you, and thank you for helping us share what was a moment of a lifetime. No question about that.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.